Welcome to the Coffee, Kegs and Kriegsspiel Podcast. I am your guest host, Paul LaFontaine, known in the IKS community as Umpire LaFondios. Our guest today is James Horton, also known as Umpire James. He is running his 100th umpired game. We're here to honor that achievement and get to know him a little bit more. Let's listen to James talk about his umpiring. James Horton, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Here you see Umpire LaFondios and Umpire James in the flesh, or at least in the digital flesh. So here's what we actually look like in real life. James, first of all, on behalf of the International Kriegsspiel Society, let me congratulate you. The reason for this podcast and the reason for honoring you is that you are umpiring your 100th game, which is an astonishing accomplishment. I think if we went back into history and actually looked at the Prussian Tischwitz and Reiswitz and all those battalion and regimental commanders who actually umpired Kriegsspiel, there's probably very few of them that actually umpired 100 Kriegsspiel. So congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it is an accomplishment.
You're the backbone of the community, and what an odd community that hangs off your backbone. That's for sure. So I would love to just walk through what it's like to have umpired 100 games and just what does it feel like to have 100 games under your belt? And was that a number that you had in your head that you wanted to hit?
No, it wasn't. I just recently, I was like, I wonder how many games I've actually run because it felt like a lot. And I was wondering if I was going to get near 100. And so I decided to tabulate them all up and do the math and figure out I was actually pretty close. So wanted to make my 100th game something special and kind of celebrate the fact because, yeah, getting 100's, it's a lot of time. My wife complains it's a second job that I get paid a little bit for it now, but not enough to justify my time. So
for the aspiring umpires out there and even those of us who've umpired a few games, how do you keep track? How do you so obviously to tabulate it, you had to go someplace to look. And do you keep track? Do you keep it on a list, or did you just go back and look at servers? How'd you figure that out?
Well, I don't get rid of any of my servers that I've had. So for any play-by-post game, I have all those servers still.
Right.
If it's a live game, I keep track of it. I have a list of it on my live game server.
Right.
And so I have a list there. And then there were a few, before I was really good about tracking it, there were a few here or there that I did that I wasn't on a list, but I remembered that I had done them, and so I added them to my list. And
fair enough.
That's how I knew.
That's cool, and that's how you got to the 100. All right, so take us all the way back. Now, which is really fantastic. You've actually recreated your very first game as your 100th game, and it's my pleasure to be a player in that game. So it's fantastic. So talk about your very first Kriegsspiel, which was Lynchburg.
Yeah. So actually, if you don't mind, I'll go even further back. So
yeah.
How I found Kriegsspiel and then got into my first game. So my background, I've been role playing with friends since I was about 12. We'd done Dungeons and Dragons and Star Wars, D6, and all sorts of stuff through high school and college, and then after college. But at some point, we were doing a game. I think it was an American Revolution game, and I wanted to incorporate battles into it. And so the rule system we were using, Savage Worlds, has a mass battle system. It's very, very simplified, and it was fun. But we did it, and I'm like, this is fun, but I want to do more. Like I want to have more strategy and things within it. So I took their rules and I started tweaking it. And making my own rules. So
say again the name of the system, Savage Battle?
Savage Worlds is the role-playing system, and then they had a mass battle calculator system. Right. And so basically for a few years, we would, within a campaign and then sometimes even outside of it, just as a battle on its own, I would be doing what eventually became Kriegsspiel without me knowing what Kriegsspiel was.
Right.
And so I was doing that, and then I remember I found Little Wars TV, and I remember I saw their Marengo video, And I was talking with my friend about that, and I said, that looks a lot of fun. We should try and do that ourselves. So we were like, how do we do it? And so we came up with a system, again, very Kriegsspiel-like, but not knowing what Kriegsspiel was. And we did it over Google. Well, we did some battles with paint, if you can imagine.
How did you do that? Talk about that. That's because
Oh, it, painfully. So you take, you get a map, you copy paste it on there, and then every time you have a unit on there, I was literally like selecting that unit because
Mhm.
it's all just one layer in paint.
Right,
So I would select the unit and copy and paste it when I moved it. But of course, it would mess up all the terrain behind it. It
right,
was absolutely horrendous. It's
right,
amazing how far it goes. We tried to do the Battle of Waterloo in paint, and it was a mess. But so anyway, yeah. So we created our own Kriegsspiel version. Again, we hadn't found tabletop simulator, so we were doing it with PowerPoint, and Google Sheets and things like that. And we played several campaign games, uh, just kind of coming up with our own rules and figuring out our own system.
right.
And that we did 3 or 4 games that way. We did a Lord of the Rings game and a Civil War game and an American Revolution game, and that was fun. And then I can't remember exactly how, but somehow I came across. I was searching war games, just trying to do some
Right.
research, and I came across the term Kriegsspiel online, and so I searched that, and then that brought me down to the International Kriegsspiel Society, where I didn't realize it was early on, but very early on, Marshall had started posting a couple videos of, um, one was like, what is Kriegsspiel or how to Kriegsspiel, and another one was a live game. It was like an 8-hour live game on the Lynchburg map, and he was just recording himself, umpiring that game. And I saw that, and I'm like, oh, that looks awesome.
Right.
But when I saw it, I didn't think I would ever be a part of it. But when I saw Marshall was doing it, I'm like, well, maybe he'd like to join in my game and play with us. So I emailed I found I sent an email through like the contact us on our website, the ICAST website.
Right.
And I wrote to Marshall and I said, hey, my friends or I are playing these games. We'd like to invite you, and if you're interested. And he said, yeah. So he joined in our American Revolution game,
Oh, that's neat. All right.
which was still over, played via PowerPoint, basically. Um,
Now, back then, I have to ask: was he a very serious marshal with a suit and tie and like a little lunchbox, or is he the same wisecracking marshal we know today?
oh, he's the same.
Okay. Good. Well,
Um,
some things are stable. Then that's good to
yeah.
hear.
So he played with us, and then he's like, well, you should join. I have this Discord group, and we're online, and we do games, and you should join us. And I'm like, well, that sounds cool. But at the time, I thought all their games were live, and I thought they were all like 10 hours long. And I'm like, there's
Right.
no way I'm ever gonna find time. Like, my wife's gonna approve me like taking a Saturday and just playing the whole day.
Right.
And
Right.
so initially, I'm like, well, thanks for the offer. I can't commit to that. And I don't think, maybe they hadn't had play by post, or Marshall just didn't tell me about it, but he just didn't mention it. But I later on I joined the Discord, and then slowly realized, oh yeah, you can do play by post games,
Right.
and not every live game's 10 hours long. And so I played in a few games initially. One ran by Tech, another one by Carter,
Uh-huh.
and kind of got a feel for how it was played. And then I'm like, well, I'm gonna try this out myself, and so created my own server. And it was very ugly when I look back at it.
Sure.
But I invited 4 people to play. So again, I invited Marshall and then 3 of my friends, and I I took the SoCal rules. Marshall had created a video about the SoCal system and how it worked, and so I watched that video, wrote down the rules, and then figured it out, and then used that to run the game. And then after running it the first time, I like certain things, didn't like others, so I started tweaking it, and that was the genesis of what has become my D6. The main
Really, all the way
rules
back
that I
then, that
use.
was the famous the James D6 system, of which Glorious Ruse, who that iconic and mysterious figure, has said, Well, the James D6 system kind of works, which I think is the highest praise that man has ever given anything. So it's amazing. Actually, you've reached a pinnacle of sorts,
That's pretty good praise.
because that's the highest praise that I think he's capable of.
His system's really good, but he doesn't ever do his system in live games. So I've got to do it. Like my system's got to be lickety split fast because you don't got time to resolve stuff. He's got time to
We all
think
have
about
our.
things and roll multiple dice, and I don't have time for that. So
So a couple questions before we move on. The three friends that were in your original American Revolution games, have they come over to Kriegsspiel, and or have they not come and joined us over here?
they've played in several games.
Right.
They've got busy with life, so they don't. I mean, they're not as near as heavily involved as I am, but they still play
Sure.
games from time to time.
Okay, so they pop in the server.
Yeah.
So is your brother one of them, Hotron?
Yep. Yeah. He
Okay,
was one of
great.
them.
So, and they, like in very clever switching of the letters in the name. You'd never guess that his last name was Horton. Those four people, was that Lynchburg? Was that the first game you put together?
Yeah, that was it. So I did
Okay.
that just to figure how things out work, get used to TTS and
But at the time, you
Discord
had
and
kind of a
everything.
matchup of Marshall's SoCal system. You were using that. It wasn't the James D6 system just yet.
No, I wouldn't have called it that. But yeah,
Let's go all the way back in time before we move on to the 100 game achievement. Um, Sixth grade, young James. Were you the dungeon master or were you a player? Talk to us about kind of the early childhood development of a 100 game
how
umpire.
did that happen? So I say in my later years, yes, I was one of those perpetual dungeon masters
You were the
because
dungeon master. Okay.
I enjoy creating games and running them, and so I enjoyed that
Right.
as a dungeon master. I enjoyed playing every now and then, but I'd say 80% of my time was as the dungeon master.
Right.
Um, and I just loved games. I loved up until I met or found Kriegsspiel. I enjoyed board games. I played a lot of different board games. I enjoyed creating games. So I've invented one board game which has been sent to a publisher. It never got published, but it was to the level of being sent to a publisher. So
Okay.
um, yeah, I enjoy playing games. I enjoy creating
So what was
games.
that board game? Just what was the topic that you
It was called Captains of Zarahemla. It was a cooperative war game. Surprise, surprise. So you and other players are captains or generals of different armies, and you're trying to stop invaders from taking over your land in a certain amount of time. And
okay?
but so that's what it
Yeah.
was.
But but then you found Kriegspiel and you came Lynchburg game. We can't talk about that game because you're actually running the replay of it, so that would be too revelatory. So we'll go on to that. So after you did that first game, what did you learn in the first game after you did that? What were the things you immediately said? Aha, I've got to change this.
Um, I think that very first game, I was trying that Lynchburg map was 3D, which I thought was cool. And so rather than a top-down view, I did like a behind-the-shoulder view for the players to see their
Mm-hmm.
pieces, which kind of worked. It was kind of cool, but it's very disorienting when you don't know. Like every 15 minutes, you're looking a certain way, and you can't really tell if it's north, south, east, or west.
Right.
Which I've learned since then. So that was one thing. I tweaked the rules a lot on terms of like disruptions and how much damage is done versus the SoCal system. And then,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So a 2-on-2 for the first game, and then you've told me before, but you immediately jumped up to kind of 8-on-8, right? I mean, you immediately accelerated it.
Well, I
If I
did.
remember
So I did
right.
2-on-2, and then I did a 3-on-3 in using the
Okay.
Cottrabra map, and then by that point, I was starting to feel comfortable with loading my own maps and making my own pieces. So I wanted to try that. So what became my master game, actually, my masterpiece, was American Revolutionary War New York
Yep.
battle,
Which you've redone as well, right?
which
You did it.
I've done that twice. Well, kind of three times, but Yeah, so that I jumped from 6 players to 20 players for that.
So the American Revolution, you did a couple versions of that. So talk through Thursday. How did the Thursday night sessions emerge?
So initially, I was doing only play-by-post games because, at the time, most Kriegsspiel games were on the Saturday morning, and every Saturday for me is busy. It's rare that I get a Saturday that I can join or host a game. So I just started with play-by-post, which I can do in the evening when I have some time. And so I'd say for the first half a year, maybe almost a year, that's all I did. And I'd usually run, when I was doing it by myself, I got to where I was pretty good at, I could do 2 games at a time, and with about 20 players per game, and I just, every other night, I'd process one game or the other and just keep them going that way.
Right.
And then, I don't know, at some point I decided I wanted to try do live games more, and at first I'm like, well, the only time I can really do it is a weekday in the night, which I figured most people couldn't do, but I figured I'd try it. And
Sure.
probably one of the reasons was I had so many battles and games I wanted to do that if they were all play by post, I'd never get to the end of it. And so my very first one was Stones River. I had made the map just for fun, and I'm like, I want to play the battle of it. But if I do another play-by-post at the time, it was just going to be too much. I'm like, I'm just going to do a live game and get it out of my system.
Right.
And that's basically what started and became the live Thursday games that I run.
Now, you'd already developed the D6 system, so it was fast enough to be able to just pick up live play.
Yeah.
So now you do, of the 100 games that you've done, how many play-by-post, how many live generally? Not that you should have it memorized.
I have it. I have my list here, so I'll tell you.
Because obviously every Thursday night puts a lot of them on the board, right?
Yeah, that put them on quickly. So 58 live games and 43.
So nearly split down the middle. Okay. So preference, which one do you like, or what are the positives and negatives of each format in your opinion?
I mean, the positive of live is you're one and done. Once you spend
Right.
3 to whatever hours on it, and that game's over. Play by post just takes a lot more time.
Right.
The other thing about live games is you can get there's more stress to it and decision making because you don't have play by post game. You can take a day to think about your decisions and what you want to do. In a live game, you really got, like a commander would, you really got to think on the spot. Okay, what am I doing?
Right.
And it's more realistic and kind of fun in that way. And
Right.
if you're co-located with someone, you can actually talk to them face to face. That can be fun. Play by post takes longer, but for both the player and the umpire, you can do a lot more with it because you have that time. So you can have more players. You can have all sorts of interesting interactions. You can I do diplomacy games with it. The one I'm in right now takes me like 3 hours to resolve a turn. But it's a lot of fun because I've got 8 nations. We're redoing World War II. And so there's a lot you can do with it.
Your diplomacy games are amazingly complex, and they're always on. I participated in number 3, and I was getting messages 24 hours a day. It felt like amazing engagement in those games. How many players were in the World War II one?
Oh, I haven't counted. There's 8
Right.
nations and 4 main players. So, 30 or 40. Yeah.
Okay. So talk about some of your experiments. I think you're one of the most experimental umpires we have. You've tried a tournament. You have played with this 3D idea. So the Romans versus the Carthaginians in 3D with the elephants and the KB's famous elephants. You've done, my very first game assistant umpiring was the BattleTech game on Thursday night. I didn't even have a mouse. But you did a BattleTech universe with a 3D BattleTech. So talk about some of the crazier experiments and where you come up with the idea and how you put that together.
Yeah. So on one level, I've done different games with very different settings. I enjoy the challenge of creating a system and a rule set and a setting for kind of weird things. So while the majority of what I do is Civil War and Napoleonic, I also do BattleTech, as you mentioned, Ancients. I've done Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, so random one.
You did a guy's autonomous nervous system, for gosh sakes.
Yes, I did. I did do the
So
battle
you
for
did
the
a
body.
picnic blanket with ants. Come on now. What do you mean most of your stuff is American Civil War? You did a guy's, what was it, his immune system.
Yeah, the immune system versus a bunch of bacteria and viruses. Um, yeah, I see a video or I get an idea and I just want to try and play it. So I have done a lot of that. And then also I've played around with the player interaction and what it looks like. So
Right.
so to one level, I have a vision of one day, 20 years from now, we'll play Kriegsspiel and it'll be VR and we'll be commanding soldiers that way, and
Mhm.
it's gonna be awesome. And so I've tried to get towards that. And rather than having blocks and maps, we actually have 3D terrain and 3D men. And um, when the umpire, you're not given a screenshot; it's live, and the umpire's showing
Mhm.
them what their commander sees as they're there and gives them a 360 view. So that's something that I've pioneered. And then um, yeah, I think I've done a fair bit with like naval games and space naval. The way those maps can work and those pieces work, that's been different.
Right.
Yeah, I didn't create the rules, but Peter Robbins and others had made a pretty good naval set of rules. But I took them, and I usually take rules that others have made and simplify them and make them quicker and easier. And so I did that for his, and ran a naval battle. I've done several naval battles.
And you used it, it was his rules you used in your Revolutionary War game where you had both land and sea,
Yeah,
right?
yep.
Yeah.
And then I've
Where
done
Chief was sailing about and shrieking in French.
yes, he had a fun time. And then yeah, I've done diplomacy games too, which takes it to a more higher level where you're kind of at the campaign scale, but you're thinking about political and economic
Right.
ramifications in addition to all the military and all that that entails. And we're on to the fourth diplomacy game, about to do the fifth in a little bit.
Now, the reason that your Saturdays are full is you have children,
Yep.
you have a family, and you teach your. So, what's the status of kind of gaming, role playing games or simple games in the house? Any interest in the house, or are they just it's something that their dad is crazy does?
They're a little interested, so I've done a few games with them. My oldest son's 13 now, so I've actually hosted, I think, 3 or 4 games with him and his cousins. I usually, recycle a game that's already been done. So we've done Brandywine with them. I did the Battle of the Five Armies with them,
Oh, that'd be fun.
but
Yeah.
basically full on Kriegsspiel, and they enjoyed that. So I do that every now and then.
Okay, that's great. So a little bit of interest. Um, so at least there'll be someone as young as Otto actually playing the game. So that's good. Um, so let's talk about players, right? So all of us umpires have our favorite players and players that do funny things. So tell us what's the wackiest thing you've had a player do inside the game? So what are some crazy player
Oh,
stories?
there's a lot of stories. I think the probably the biggest one that comes to mind was one of my earlier games. We did the Battle of Bull Run, and Lake was the Confederate cavalry commander, if I recall,
Right.
and he fought a skirmish with Union cavalry, and then decided to uh, take off his uniform, put on a dead soldier's uniform, and then pretend to be a courier. Went up to the Union general to deliver a message or some fake message, and then tried to kill him. So that I had to bring in my role playing knowledge and make up some rules
Right.
on the spot for that, how successful he was or not. Um,
Those old dungeon mastering skills come in
yeah,
handy when that individual player wants to be the sniper or the spy, right?
yep. So he attempted to assassinate the general as a spy courier. Didn't work out.
Right.
He ended up dying, but it's pretty fun. Um, I usually don't allow hijinks like that as much anymore, but it was pretty fun.
Right. Right. Well, I guess yeah, we all have a philosophy on it. So, what player has developed the most, or I mean, it's time to show some or send some props out, or who? I know Panzer plays with you on Thursday nights quite a bit, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's a crowd because Thursday night's a weird time, so there's kind of a set crowd of maybe 20 regulars that rotate. Some are quite regular, and some are every couple games. Um, so yeah, there's that crew there. People who
Yeah.
have developed a lot. I've seen a few. Some that come to mind. Special Zendos, Hendrick. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I,
In your
I don't know.
crew on Thursday nights, you've got quite a few of them come along, right?
Oh yeah,
There's some well-known names in there that come in there,
yeah. I mean,
so
yeah.
it's fun
Chief
to
is
talk to
usually
them.
there. Kermit, Arp wakes up at 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning to play those
Right.
games. Um, yeah.
I lurk on your server on Thursday nights more than you know.
Oh,
So I go look at the text channels to see what you guys are up to, but I can't stay up as long as you guys do. But that's good. Now the battles themselves. Are you a military historian? Where do you get the ideas for the battles? Because you really have a tremendous breadth with your 100.
um, mostly YouTube.
Yeah.
I Yeah, I enjoy watching the videos like Epic History TV, Invicta, Kings and Generals. So
Hmm.
there's a lot of channels out there that put out really good content. I enjoy the ones that are like they're usually 15 to 20-minute long and cover a battle or a campaign or a war. So
Right.
usually I will watch one of those and say that looks like fun. I want to see if I can recreate that. Um, and part of the challenge is every battle and conflict there's certain limitations and parameters, and so it's how do you set up the scenario so that you kind of mimic that same situation, is the challenge. And then I'd say the other half or maybe less than half of games is I'm just inspired by a map, so I'll look on Library of Congress and find just a good looking Civil War map, and so I will
And work out from that
start from that and figure out what battle
from
fits
your
it,
map.
and then create one from that. So
That's always the way, right? There's something that catches all of our eye, and we say, "Hey, I want to give that a go." Now, you've even put together a video on GIMP and how to use GIMP to create maps and how to fix certain things on the maps. Still using GIMP? Is that still your tool of choice?
much to Damon's limit. Yeah, it's free and I know how to work it and I'm happy with it. So
Okay.
it took me a while. When I first started, I spent a long time because I used to take maps off of Wikipedia, kind of the black
Right.
and white and gray ones that with a little bit
Right.
of topography. I take those, put those in paint, and then I would manually draw out because they have the piece markers on them, so I'd manually draw out myself using paint to make like a
I know
clean.
that's actually in your video how to do that.
Yeah, so how to make a clean one. So that's where I started from. And then when I did the same thing in GIMP, so I'd pull in a map because a lot of the Library of Congress maps they'll have unit markers and movements and labels and stuff.
Right.
So you got to clean it off. And so I did it manually there too. I would extract a color and then I'd paint over a little bit. It would take me hours and hours. Now I know how to do it a lot faster, but um, so the healing tool and then layers changed my life in terms of making maps on paint. But I spent a lot of time before I got to that level doing it the hard way. Um,
It really is repetition. So you just because you develop your own style, and so you can do it really fast. As with all technology, it's.
yeah.
But I imagine you can. I mean, how long does it take you to build a map today? on your 100th game? How long did it take you to do the?
If I take like a normal map off Library of Congress, it takes me like an hour to clean up and color, like how I normally do it. Where it used to take me, I don't know, 10 to 20.
An hour to get a map done. That's great.
Yeah.
It's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. And so you still stand by the technique of using a map from Library of Congress, putting some color to it, maybe doing some healing around it to take out different units on it. And that's still your approach.
Yep.
Okay. That's great. James D6 system is, of the 100 games, how many has the James D6 system been the engine?
Probably half. I probably have, I don't know how many rule systems I've made. I've probably made 8 to 10. So I have a system for ancients. Actually, I have 3 systems for ancients, depending on what the game scenario is. But and then I've made some more. I've played around with D12 and D20, and then I have a separate set of rules for space battles and Star Wars.
Sure.
But yeah, the majority is the D6. It works, and it's had a lot of play testing now. So. And the nice thing is I've used it so much, and then so many other people have used it so much that now, like on my live Thursdays, usually there's 1 or 2 umpires there that are completely comfortable with my system as well, and so I don't even have to do all the combat. We'll split it between us, and it makes it go a lot faster.
Yeah, I've seen that. Right, that's amazing. And it'd be interesting to do a poll of all the IKS umpires to see the James D6 diaspora, like how many different versions of it, because everybody takes and puts their own spin on it, right?
Yeah.
So it'd be kind of interesting to see how many of the versions have propagated out there. Compare yourself at game 10 versus game 100, and kind of what wisdom have you accrued on that? And I know that our new umpire channel in the community is where folks come in to learn some of the basics and everything. Kind of looking back to the James that was doing his 10th game, what have you learned since then that has really stood the test of time?
I mean, since my 10th game, I think a lot of my learnings have been around Discord and using it well to organize the game and make sure the players do what I want. We've learned a lot. It's pretty common practice now, but it wasn't when we started, which was like, for example, everyone has a channel, but if you're co-located with someone in your own channel, making sure to use a thread so that the channel stays clean for just orders and updates. That was, a year or a little over a year ago, maybe. That wasn't a common thing, and so channels would get filled up with people talking, and if you want to go back to what were their previous orders, you had to scroll for days. So things like that just really keep the Discord channels clean. I've learned a lot, and it helps a lot.
Because Discord is 75% of the experience, right? And really, if you think about not just the images, but from the player's perspective, being co-located, being able to give orders, being able to receive information, all that is really Discord driven. And so Discord expertise, we all tend to go, how do you roll die to resolve combat? But really Discord management and Discord skills is really important. That's a great point.
It is important, yeah.
What are some other observations you have?
So, I mean, I'm constantly trying to improve the player experience. And really it's within the game design of how do you make a game that has as many important decisions for the player to make as possible. And organizing the structure around that and the game setup and figuring out, it's an ongoing journey for me to figure out, but that's what I'm always trying to improve on. That and trying to get as many players as possible while also limiting the umpire workload. So, we've come a long way in, having 2 ICs and staff supporting primary players. So where it used to be like 1 player, representing a general and an umpire can maybe handle 10 players in a game. Now with staff involved, you can have 3 staff per player, and so now you got 40 instead of 10. So you can get a whole lot more players involved and playing, and there's a lot of fun and interactions in that too.
Well, you've been a big advocate for the staff style games, right?
I have. Every game, if it's a play-by-post, I definitely want to have two ICs for everyone and staff. And then I've also been playing around with what I call, well, I guess we all call the command staff style games, which is in some ways the original Kriegsspiel. The thing about Discord and the way we do it is, of course, you can split players off and they're in their own realm, and there's a lot of fun in that. But there can also be a lot of fun, especially if it's an in-person game, but even live and sometimes play-by-post, it can be fun to be together as a group and represent the command staff in the tent, kind of behind the army and making decisions and couriers going in and out and doing it that way. There's pros and cons of each, but I've been playing around with that too, and it's a lot of fun.
So going forward, I mean, you're at your 100th game after Gen T9, Glorious Ruse, and myself win this game. What will and the remainder of the Union staff? What going forward? What are some thoughts of directions you may take things?
Yep. So I actually shared today. I've got 2 games. They've already got servers made. So I'm just waiting for my other 2 games to end, and then I'll start these. So when Diplomacy 4 ends, I've already got Diplomacy 5. I've got the map and the rules all set up. Excel sheets mostly set up. So that's my last planned Diplomacy game. We went from starting in.
You're running out of epics, right? So World War II and.
Well, yeah, we started in a small area in Germany, and then we did larger Germany, and then the Napoleonic Wars. Now it's World War II. This Diplomacy 5 is the Galaxy, and so I'm ending there. I think if I do it again, I'll go back smaller again. So I'm doing that one, and then actually today I just finalized. I'm going to do the War of the Fourth Coalition, the Franco-Prussian War, and it'll be a lot like my Italy 1796 game, and so it'll basically be the campaign that led up to what was the Battle of Jena-Austedt. We'll see if it's Jena-Austedt again. Probably won't be, but I'll do that, and then decide if I might continue it from there, kind of like in a multi-part campaign as I did with Italy. But I'm also, so this will anger some people, but I'm planning to charge for it. They require Patreon membership. To help justify my time to my wife, I'm trying to figure out ways to get paid a little bit for my time. And I found that when people pay, of course, they're much more committed. There's some people that are absolutely against that. They don't, they like Kriegsspiel being free, and I don't blame them. But I'm trying to find ways to get paid for a little bit of time I spend.
Sure.
Kind of pave the way, because I think everyone, there's a lot of good umpires, and the work that they do and the time they put in, they should get paid for it. And I'd love to see the IKS have a professional arm where you have, 10 years from now, you have master umpires getting paid lots of money for amazing games that they run. So anyway, I'm going to charge for that, and we'll see how that goes. I'm constantly trying to figure out, different methods that work in terms of getting paid for games.
Yeah, fair enough.
I still try.
I know it's a topic that is certainly its own podcast. But,
yeah, it could be.
Okay, you're going to do some work on that. That's great, and it would be typical of a podcast like this to say, "Oh gosh, I won't even be around when you do your 200th game." But at the rate that you go, we'll have this podcast next year, and it'll be your 200th game. So I'm confident that we'll be able to celebrate that as well. James, I mean, just a little bit of time tonight. This is all about you, learning more about how you came to be the amazing umpire that you are. And I can say with all sincerity that you are the backbone of this community in terms of the volume, but also you just don't crank out games. You actually think about it, you experiment, you try things, and you really, and in the admin side, you're helping actually run the community as well. So you're a tremendous contributor to it, and we all really appreciate it. And I just wanted to interview you on your 100th game because it's an amazing accomplishment. And I can tell you that we all really appreciate what you do. And thanks for coming on and talking a little bit about it.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Coffee, Kegs and Kriegsspiel Podcast, where we talk about all things Kriegsspiel. Come join us for live and play-by-post scenarios in our Discord server and check out our website through the link in the show notes. We'll see you out there.